Welcome to the Empowered Women. Welcome to the Balanced Hormones Empowered Women podcast. I'm your host, Abby Pajejo, registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and health coach. And what I do is I help women of all ages align their diet, their lifestyle, and their exercise with their hormones in order to unlock their most vibrant health and a feminine based approach that's about working smarter and not harder. And today, for my very favorite episode, I have my very favorite person and soulmate, Damien joining us for this special podcast on how did I manifest my soulmate? How did we manifest each other? So, my love.
Hello, my name is Damien, and I'm a certified life purpose coach. I specialize in helping men who are ready to transform their life by offering personalized coaching to help them discover their purpose and achieve success. How to manifest your soulmate. So, all we can do is share our personal experience. All we can do is share how we manifested one another. And hopefully, we can offer some keys that will help you to manifest your soulmate. So, where do we begin? I think the best place to start is probably our story, just how it all happened. And it's a very magical story. It's just amazing how things fell into place and how we met one another. And yeah, let's start there. So, you want to start the story? I think we
Yeah,
should start.
I'll start the story. Okay, so we actually met on Instagram.
I slid into the DMs.
Say we didn't purposely meet on Instagram,
It
but
wasn't okay, so it wasn't like that. I wasn't just prowling. I wasn't on the prowl looking to just slide into her DMs. It was really, a series of events that were beyond both of our control that just led us to, connecting with one another. We both were following a fitness trainer, a very popular fitness trainer named Masi Arias.
mhm.
By at that time, I think she was going by Man KO Fit, but Massey Arias, we were both following her, and I would look at this page for inspiration. Sometimes I would like, sometimes I would comment on some of her posts, and in this particular instance, I think either I commented or you might have commented on
I
a post.
I commented.
So you commented on a post, and I liked the comment that you made. And I worked up the confidence. I think I might have clicked on your profile and saw this beautiful woman and I'm the type of person I like to read the captions that's underneath a post. I don't just look at the photo. I need to know the depth of the person that I'm engaging with. And some of the things that you were saying, it just like really, yeah, I don't know. I could really relate. It really resonated with me. And so I was like, damn, she looks perfect. She like inside and out. And so I was like, I'm curious to know more. And so I decided to send you a private message. And me, with my cheesy sense of humor, I didn't know how to initiate a conversation with such a beautiful woman. And I was a bit intimidated, if I'm being honest, but I decided to just go with the flow and go with the first thing that came to mind. And so that was, hey, when is the last time you had cheesy fries? And so I know it's as cheesy. It's literally cheesy.
No, I was a dietitian yet.
I didn't know, right? I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Cheesy fries are one of my favorite foods. Like I don't eat it regularly, especially now that I'm with a dietitian. But um, I just thought like she just looks so athletic and she was so like her abs were so defined. I was like, I'm like, this woman has a really strict diet. And so I decided to just, when's the last time you let yourself live a bit? When's the last time you had cheesy fries? And so, yeah, that was the first message that I sent.
And I don't even remember what I replied. I just remember reading it and being like, what is this?
Like, this random guy who's asking me about cheesy fries.
Right, but I will say your energy came across different. It's definitely, I felt a distinction between the typical dude sliding into your DMs. It's like just clearly after one thing. And I will say from the very beginning, like your energy felt different and distinct to me, enough so that my intuition was like, talk to him, like give him a chance.
And I think a part of that too is like right following that message, the direction of the conversation, it became very genuine.
Mhm.
It became very like this is me as a sincere person. It's not just me trying to engage with you, to have sex with you. This isn't like me trying to seduce you, like with inauthentic wordplay. Like, hi, my name is Damien,
Mhm.
and I like what you posted there.
Mhm.
And I was being very sincere and upfront.
Yeah. I felt like you wanted to learn who I was as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so from that point, we just started talking on a regular basis, and it was kind of like, okay, where is this going? How I'm living in California at the time.
And I'm living in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But it quickly became we were talking every day, like for hours, very easily, that like effortless, delicious conversation that you kind of just can't get enough of. And you're like, oh my God, we're connecting on so many different levels. I mean, kind of all the things, all the boxes were just kind of like tick, 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 tick.
Right. And like I remember we would FaceTime regularly. I would get
Mhm.
off of work and I'd be looking forward to my quality time with who at the time I suspected was my soulmate, but
Mhm.
we hadn't, everything manifest with time. We weren't quite sure. We were still in the process of getting to know each other, but
Mhm.
it felt different than any relationship that I had, you know, been in before.
It
And
it definitely felt different from the beginning. We both had that feeling.
yeah, so that's the first thing. It felt different immediately. It wasn't that first infatuation phase, which feels beautiful in any new relationship, right? But this felt different. This felt like, oh my God, I finally found her,
Mhm. Yeah.
and vice versa,
Yeah,
right?
that's how it felt for me too. Like, wow, this guy is special. Like, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah, and so we had this magical connection. We were looking forward, and at that point, it just kind of felt like, okay, I need to get to know this person and I need to let this person know who I am. And so we decided that it was time to meet in person after what, a month or two of,
Yeah, so the
yeah.
timeline was we started talking, it was like the end of November, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so we were talking through the winter, through the end of the year, and we were like, okay, you know what? This is a thing. We really need to meet and see how it is in person. If it's how we're feeling and thinking it will be, like this is the real deal. So let's meet and find out. So in February,
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Me being from California, I had no desire whatsoever to ever travel to Wisconsin, where it was like just infamously cold there, right?
especially not in winter.
Especially not in winter. Like it was December going into the early months of so like she said, it was about February when we finally uh did make the travel arrangements, and she flew out to California in early February, and that's when we met in person.
So, bonus is I have some really good friends that live in Orange County and live in LA. So, even though a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're just flying out to California to meet this guy that you've never met before, like, how risky is that? I've always been one to trust.
Right.
I've always been one to really trust my intuition. My intuition was really telling me like this is the guy, like you got to go meet him, and it just worked out for me to go to California. And since I had so two of my really close friends at the time were living in the OC and in LA. And so I was able to go out and visit them, stay with them. So I was in like a safe environment at my friend's house. And then he and I just planned a date to meet up. So we had basically one night and 2 days together.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the amount of time we had to know, is this the real thing? Because I didn't have very long to stay in California. I think I was only there for 4 or 5 days total.
Right. On a physical level, because I mean, when you're talking to somebody via the internet, via phone calls or FaceTime, video calls, you know, it's such a little small period of time. You're not able to see those intimate actions, like the way this person carries themselves. Do they get easily agitated, or, are they being their authentic self on the other side of this phone or the other side of this camera?
Hmm.
And that's how a lot of people end up getting catfished, because you can be anything on the other side of,
Hmm.
some sort of device, but to actually have that experience, to be able to finally connect
Hmm.
physically, was the true test of whether or not it was a genuine connection or not. And I think in that period of time, we were able to decide, like, okay, this is everything we imagined it to be, and we ended up staying in a
The haunted
haunted
hotel.
hotel, Charlie Chaplin's haunted hotel in Santa Barbara. If for anyone who doesn't believe it's haunted by Charlie Chaplin. No.
But I just wanted to say that from the first minute that I actually met you in person, because I mean, obviously, like I'm in California, so I spent the first few days at my friend's house, and then she lent me her car, drove over to meet up with Damien, and I still remember getting to the spot where we were gonna meet, and he comes over and opens my car door. And he looks at me and he looks me deeply into the eyes. And I still remember this moment. And he moves in close and he kind of like was waiting for my, body language permission. And I
Yeah.
looked at him and then he just goes right in for the kiss. And I remember
Yeah.
you had both hands on either side of my face and just went right in for the kiss. But he was on point because it was just the most natural thing that could have happened in that moment. And I knew in that moment, I was like, oh yeah, he is the guy that I thought he was. And this is real.
And that moment for me, for one, I was just in awe, because I mean, if you haven't met this woman in person, or if you have met this woman in person, then you know she's even more amazing in person. And I was just in awe. I was like, oh my God, this is real. And I was like,
You do
you
exist.
know,
You exist.
are you real? And, just waiting for that energetic exchange of her to reciprocate, like, yes, I'm receptive to you the way you're receptive to me.
Hmm.
I went in for that kiss,
Hmm.
and man, sparks flew,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they haven't stopped flying
They
since.
have not. Yeah, it was like a I'm home. Like, oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
There you are.
yeah. And so that's the gist of our beautiful, amazing, magical union, like how we ended up meeting. And one thing led to another. We were deciding, okay, are you moving to California or am I moving to Wisconsin? And ultimately, fate had it that it was just better for me to move to Wisconsin, and we established our life together.
Yeah, and it didn't take long either because we met in the beginning of February, February 8th. We had our date, and that's now our anniversary.
Right.
And by the end of March, you had already moved into Wisconsin and moved in with me.
Yeah. So it was like the moment she left, and it's funny, like she has this story, like when she was on the plane headed back to Wisconsin, like she was like throwing up, like,
Okay, so
sorry.
this is another this is another thing. So I really like my body talks to me and I'm really trying to live in a place where I'm in alignment with my body and I listen to the signals that it gives me. I listen to my intuition. I listen to how my body physically feels, right? I don't just make decisions only with my brain. I always try and take into account what my body is trying to tell me. So, I mean, I just knew, like I said, from the first moment, from that first kiss when we first saw each other, I was like, yes. But I continued to receive confirmation through my physical body throughout the time that we were together. And also when it was time to part and me to leave and come back to Wisconsin, that was such a like an aha moment for me paying attention to my body signals because I remember that whole last day. I remember I was just like not feeling good. I was nauseous. I couldn't eat. And there was no reason. I hadn't eaten anything bad. We had all the same food, so it wasn't food poisoning. I didn't actually throw up then, but I was just that whole day, I just didn't feel right. And something was kind of telling me like, oh, it's because I don't want to leave him. Like I just found him. I don't want to be separated. And my body was like literally telling me no. So we get through the day, and then finally, when it's time to say goodbye, I remember driving away, and I didn't even make it a block before I burst into tears, like full on sobbing because I just couldn't drive away from you. I was like, I just found you. I can't leave you, you know? And so there was that, and then traffic in California, right? Driving all the way back to my friend's house, getting my stuff, and then driving all the way to LAX. I mean, that took a few hours in and of itself. I remember my flight didn't leave until like late in the evening, so I'm there at LAX, and I'm just feeling worse and worse. And I make it through security. I make it to my gate. I make it on the plane, and by the time and I haven't eaten like all day. I don't know, I didn't have an appetite at all. And I get on the plane, and as soon as the plane is like ready to take off, I get so nauseous. I know, at that point where you know you're going to throw up and that you only have like a couple seconds because like it's about to happen. That started happening. Now, you guys know when you're on a plane and it's taxiing and then they get to that point where it starts to go fast and it's about to take off, you cannot get up out of your seat, right? Like I don't know what would happen if you did, but they could maybe stop the plane, and I didn't want to be that person. So I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up right now while the plane is taking off. And luckily they have the little like air sick bags in the seat pocket in front of you, and I was able to grab one of those. I literally like vomited. Oh, and I didn't really have anything to vomit. I hadn't eaten all day, but I was like kind of just heaving into this bag as the plane was taking off. And honestly, there's nothing ever wrong with me. I literally think it was my body rejecting leaving California and leaving you. Because then as soon as I got home and rested the next day, I was completely fine. So I was like, okay, that was literally like a physical response of my body being like, don't leave him. It was a little dramatic, but it, it definitely got my attention.
And so it might sound like, you know, I don't know, coincidence or luck or, that we found each other. But I think it's important that we discuss some of the things that led up to that moment
Mhm.
that led to us connecting.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to talk about the sacrifice and the work we had to do in
Uh-huh.
order
Oh, yeah.
to make space for one another.
Absolutely, because there was a whole time it wasn't just like I mean, it does kind of seem like it happened overnight because it did happen very fast, right? November, and then we met in February, and then suddenly he was here and moved in March. On the grand scheme of things, that is really fast. But I think the reason that it did happen so fast is because all the things that we did to prepare for each other
Mm.
before we even met, before we even started talking, before we even knew that each other existed.
Right. Or before we even knew that we were going to manifest one
Mhm.
another.
Exactly.
Like it was more so a self-focused journey that ultimately prepared us. Like if you have a guest coming over your house, right? You're gonna clean up the house first. You don't want to just have it all tattered and looking a mess when they arrive. Well, we were cleaning house without knowing that a guest was arriving. And I think this sent a message to the universe
Yeah.
that you're ready now.
Yeah. So my thing that I started doing is I had gotten to this point, dating where I was just like, okay, I want to create a sacred space in my life for my dream man to come in. And I'm not going to allow anyone else to come in that space unless he's the one. So this space is going to sit open as long as it needs to sit open. And it could be literally a physical space or also just an energetic space in your life. Like I'm not going to just date casually. I'm not going to let anyone come in and be the filler because that was a thing. And I think a lot of us do this. I was certainly doing this. When you're dating around, you're getting attention, right? And so sometimes, and I have been guilty of this in the past, kind of kind of knowing deep down that that person wasn't the one, but kind of stringing them along because you're supposed to be dating and you're supposed to be talking to people and the attention is nice kind of thing. And so I think we've all gone on dates with people that we've kind of known that this isn't going to work out, but we tried to make it work anyway, just because we needed something maybe to fill our space and time and feel less lonely. And so I had to call myself out on that behavior. And I was like, you know what? How am I going to bring him in if I don't have a space for him? So I kind of made the decision that no more filler, no more just casual dates. This has to be serious. And this space that I'm creating for him, no one else gets to come in it except for the one. And so I created that space in my life. I stopped casually dating and I really held that space. And it honestly didn't take that long. I think it was a few months of me like really committing to that. And then you came in, and then when you came in, that space was completely open for you. Mhm.
And I remember telling you in the beginning, like, I love hard and, you're going to need a lot of space in order to contain this love. And so that I think that just ties into that so well. And I've always held this philosophy that in order to receive something from the universe, you have to be willing to sacrifice something to the universe. I call it the law of equivalent exchange. And basically what that is if I want to receive some sort of blessing or manifest something from the universe needs me to put forth some sort of action to show that I am willing to do the work and that I'm worthy of receiving what it is that I'm asking for. And so for me, in that case, being from California, I was smoking a lot of marijuana. I was smoking a lot of marijuana. I was growing it, and like, so I just had copious amounts of it, which was legal in California. And I was numbing myself in a sense because I wasn't satisfied with my living situation at the time and my relationships. And so I was kind of numbing myself. And I got to this point where I said, what am I doing? Why am I numbing myself? What is it that I'm running from? And I decided to start to look inward and doing what they call shadow work, which is basically taking a look at the darker aspects of ourselves so that we can confront them and work on them so we can bring them to light. And what I realized was I was numbing myself with THC, marijuana. So I took pounds or however much I had. I don't want to exaggerate, but I had a lot, right? And I just flushed it all down the toilet. Yeah, I just decided like I need to make space. I don't know what or who I'm making space for. I just know that I need to make space in my life for something better. And that was my sacrifice. I replaced that with exercise and really focusing on my diet, which is probably why I was on the fitness page where we
Mhm.
met,
Mhm.
because I was starting to go through this transformation period where it's like, hey, you know, I want something better for myself. And I think that spoke to the universe, letting the universe know, like, I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think another big thing too, so in addition to sacrifice, another big thing is starting to define what you want. And a lot of times that starts with defining what you don't want, right? Like in past relationships, things that didn't work out, knowing, okay, where did I go wrong? What are the things that I definitely don't want? Because sometimes it's easier to start there. And then taking that a step further and defining what I do want. So I remember before we started talking, when I was creating this space for him, I was like, okay, I'm creating the space for this perfect man to come in. Who do I want him to be? And so I sat down and I made a list, literally. He's seen the list. That's why he's laughing. I kept it and I showed it to him like years later after we had already been together. Um, So I made a list, and on my list, I divided it into two sections. I took like a whole page of paper, and on the top half, it was things I need in a man. So these things were non-negotiable. Things like being kind-hearted and being emotionally mature and loving me fully for who I am. Things that I just would not negotiate. And then the second half of the list was things that I'd really like to have. And so just all the extra stuff, like of course I want him to be handsome, things like that, things that it would just be really nice to have. And so it really made me sit down and identify with myself what was so important that it had to go in the non-negotiable category. And then what were the things that was just like, it would be nice kind of thing. And I think that's so key when you're calling something in is you need to actually know what you want. I mean, we kind of just tend to assume like, oh yeah, I know what I want because I'm me and I know myself. But if we've never actually taken the time to really define it, and if you have to write it down, you have to know what to write down, right? You're really going to have to make those decisions. What do I truly want? And I think when you do that, then you're able to perceive it.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important piece is the actually writing it down because when you write something down, you're taking it from that subconscious, just, I know what I think, it's in my head, but when you write it down, again, you're putting forth an action and you're taking it from the subconscious, in my opinion, into the consciousness because you're making a conscious effort to say, this is what I want. So, I mean, and that ties into with the power of journaling. And, there's a lot of different names for it, scripting and things of that nature. One funny thing though about her list, right? You know how she said I had like the mandatory, the must-haves, and then she had like the things I would like. Well, in the mandatory must-haves on her list after I read it, she had he must drink kombucha.
And I honestly don't know how that ended up in the mandatory because surely I meant to put it in the
Right?
optional.
It was mandatory. So if the guy didn't drink kombucha, he wasn't kidding the girl. And I just happened, I love kombucha. And even it was so funny because when I told my coworkers back in California that I had met this woman, and they said, "Oh," and I was like, "You know what? She even knows how to brew kombucha." And they were like, "Oh, some hippy dippy," and I'm like, "Hippy dippy? Like, what are you? Like, is it wrong to love kombucha?" But yeah, it was just so funny that she put that in the must-haves, and I just happened to fit that criteria as well.
And honestly, he fit every single thing on that list. I mean, it just blew my mind. And there was a lot of things on my list. It was like an entire page of
Yeah.
paper filled with and like multiple, not just one line, but multiple columns across the page. I had a lot on there and you fit absolutely every single thing. So it wasn't just like one or two things that, oh, he fit. No, it was like very specific down, even down to he drinks kombucha. He checked all the boxes.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, all right. So we manifested each other. And, you know, one thing that we've had to do in the process of, okay, now have found this person who is extremely precious and sacred to me, was consider our old patterns, our old relationships. Like, what were some of the patterns that we fell into in our old relationships? Because for one, no one's perfect. And I didn't want to bring any of my toxic traits that I might have had in the past through my experiences of learning and growing into this relationship with us. Um, and also I wanted to be aware of the patterns in the other people I've been with that I may not have been aware of. And I wanted to be consciously aware of those things so that I didn't fall into those patterns, uh, again.
Mhm.
And so for me, like most men, um, I struggled with being faithful as, and in retrospect, I know it's because I was discontent. I hadn't found that person. I was settling, um, in many instances of past relationships that I've had and not truly valuing the sacredness of the union between me and the person I'm with. And so that in itself was something that I had to consciously make an agreement with myself and a pact with her, my soulmate, that, hey, no, this is so sacred. There is not any space for anyone else. And so we developed this philosophy. She and I, we came to this conclusion. And I think I was the first one to bring it up, but I was like, look, we can't allow any cracks into our relationship. No cracks. And so this has just been an ongoing theme in our relationship where we don't allow any cracks into our relationship. And what I mean by that is not allowing anything to fester, not allowing any secrets to be held from one another that's going to be detrimental to our relationship. If someone, you know, like for instance, I had a coworker who was getting really flirtatious with me. She was touching me and basically coming on to me. And I had to set some boundaries, let her know I'm not single, and I am a faithful man. And I came home that evening and I told Abby about that, because I don't want to allow anything that would potentially compromise us somewhere down the line to
Mm,
come to fruition.
mm.
And so, yeah, no cracks.
And it's so important that we feel safe to speak to each other about these things because sometimes it can even be something uncomfortable. And I want to kind of take it back to when we first got together. So, like so many women out there, my past relationship, I got cheated on multiple times.
Mhm.
And, I was very much in a state of victimhood about that. And that was something that I did a lot of work on myself moving forward. And there's only so much work you can do on yourself alone, and you should. And then the next part of the work comes when you get in a relationship. So in the beginning of the relationship, even though I know he's the one and he just has a whole different energy and personality and attitude than my ex, I still had triggers sometimes that would come up and they weren't even his fault. He didn't even do anything wrong, but inevitably, ladies, if you've been through a relationship, and I'm sure this applies to men too, if you've been through a relationship where you've been mistreated and you have developed coping patterns and mechanisms, and you probably still have some trauma or some PTSD from getting cheated on or from being abused or getting treated in a certain way. Even when you get with your person who is perfect for you will still get triggered by things, especially in the beginning. So just be ready for that and know that if those triggers come up, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. I never doubted that you were the right person. And I think because we had that no cracks mentality, I felt safe enough that I could talk to you about it. And I think the really important thing is open communication here because I was able to say, hey, that made me feel this way, and it's not your fault, but it reminded me of this time when I was, in this relationship. Like, for example, let's take something just really simple. I remember we were following this girl who did a lot of yoga, and she was posting like naked yoga pictures, and you had liked one. And, not really a huge deal, right? I guess you could argue either way. But for me, coming out of a relationship where I had been cheated on, and not only been cheated on, but always forced to compete with other women and kind of made to believe that I had to compete every day to like earn him. Otherwise, it was my fault that he was choosing someone else. And you were never like that at all. But I still had that old programming within me. Like I have to compete. I have to show that I'm better. I have to prove. And
Mhm.
so when I saw you liking, another woman in a naked yoga position, I was like, I was threatened. Even though you've never given me a reason to feel threatened and you've always been so respectful. So I had to say, this isn't your fault. I am so deeply triggered by this small incident because the whole like iceberg, that I have left over from my past relationship. And so I feel scared right now. Because, and ladies, sometimes you just got to be vulnerable and be in your feminine and admit rather than being aggressive with him, actually own your feelings and be like, you know what, that made me feel scared. I feel scared. I feel threatened because I feel like she might take you away from me because you might prefer her to me. And when you put it in that type of context, it kind of diffuses the situation because you don't feel attacked. And suddenly you're able to see it as, oh, my baby feels unsafe. Like she needs me to protect her. She needs me to reassure her and comfort her because she loves me and she doesn't want to lose me. Right. So it completely changes. So I had to be mindful of not finger pointing and making it his fault because it wasn't, but explaining to him why I might have felt unsafe or threatened because of my past relationships and programming. And when he understood that, then we were really just able to open it up and talk about anything and safely express our needs. And that to me, just that helped me get through all those triggers in the beginning. because I knew that I was safe and that you cared about my feelings.
Right. And so to bring more context to that, I liked the photo and I explained that I read the caption on the photo and she had gone through some sort of transformation. And I was just, yeah, was it a race what do they call it? Like a sexy
Yeah,
photo?
yeah,
But it was more so the caption that I relate to. And I was like, okay, and I liked it.
yeah.
But what I had to realize in that lesson was I have to be mindful that I am protecting the person who I am with, and I can't be engaging in something that might come off as like I'm interested in someone else or that I have some sort of intentions that might feel threatening. And so we were talking about making space in having the container, right? And allowing enough space for us to hold the love that we have for one another. But it's so important, especially as a man, for us to have enough room to allow the other person to process and work through their emotions and like continuing that process of doing shadow work, right?
Hmm.
Um, so even though, and that was just one example, there may have been other times where something wasn't my fault or something wasn't her fault. And we give each other that space to work through it,
Hmm.
because we love each other and we understand that we're on a journey where both of us are growing. We're both individuals. We're not, and you hear a lot of people say we're one. We come together as one. And while that's a nice concept, the reality of it is that we are both two different individuals
Hmm.
and we've come together as a unit. And so what that means is we have to make sure that this unit is taken care of and this unit is taken care of as well.
Hmm.
And we allow each other that space,
We do.
and in turn, it's allowed us to one, get to know each other better and two, feel safe still feel safer with one another.
Hmm.
We can talk about past relationships with one another
Oh yeah, yeah.
and feel safe about it because we've done the work to work through those things.
Hmm.
So when I'm speaking about something that I experienced in a past relationship, I'm not relating it I'm not relaying it with trauma attached to it.
Hmm.
I'm not still emotionally charged from that experience.
Hmm.
So when I relay it, and it's like if I'm angry and I'm upset, or if I'm sad, then the person I'm talking to is going to take on that energy as well.
Yeah.
But if I'm healed, if I'm coming from a place of healing where I learned a lesson from what it is that I experienced, then they're going to be more receptive to that energy and they're going
Yeah.
to reciprocate that energy. And so because we've done that shadow work, it does allow us to communicate
Hmm.
a lot more effectively with regards to the things that we've experienced in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. And because of our bond too, I mean, we're also best friends in addition to that. So if you think about it, say your best friend is telling you a story about their ex, and maybe it's even as like a sexual situation, as you're listening to your best friend, you're not going to feel threatened by that. You're going to be listening with the intent to support them. Right. And so that's what we do with each other. Because we have this bond, we are able to talk about those things. And I always try to listen with the intention of supporting him. He's always my ally. Like everything that we face, even past situations that we've had to, move through, we face them together. So if he's telling me something that happened to him in the past and he's talking about, an ex-girlfriend or something, I'm not looking at it as a threat, right? I'm looking at it as how can I support him in this situation? He feels safe enough to tell me this. I'm on his side. And I think that's so key to our relationship is that we're always on each other's side. And because we have this safe space where we can genuinely say how we feel and have this open communication that we talk back and forth, we've never actually had a fight where we've shouted at each other,
No.
ever cursed each other out, or belittled each other in any way. Like that just doesn't happen in our relationship. saying that we never disagree. Of course, we're two individuals, but because we have this safe space and we both feel seen and heard, and like our feelings and what we have to say matters, it's never escalated to the point where there's been fighting or shouting or problems like that. Because, I had to sit back and think, like, I used to be the woman that if I didn't feel heard, I would shout. I would get in your face and I would shout. I've never done that with you. I've never had to, because it never gets to that point. You're listening to me already.
Right. And as a former counselor and currently still being a life purpose coach, I understand the root causes of anger is one, things feeling like they're out of your control, and two, feeling like you are not being understood. And so that takes it back to the importance of that open communication so that we can really get to the root of what it is you're trying to communicate and what it is I'm trying to communicate. And that's that internal work as well. Like we're doing this work on ourselves and we're discovering these aspects of ourselves that still need improvement and vocalizing that to one another.
Mhm.
And so I have an analogy that I hold dear to my heart because it really helped me to love her better once I understood the immense power of self-love. Um, and the analogy is something like if I had a possession, right? Let's say I had a really nice car or a really nice pair of shoes and I cherish that thing, right? I'm going to do everything that I can to take care of it. I'm going to polish the vehicle. I'm going to make sure that my sneakers aren't scuffed or whatever this nice thing is because I care about that thing. Well, when it comes to you and your significant other, your soulmate, if they care about you, if you are that thing they possess, that possession in a sense, and they care about you, for their sake, you would want to take care of that thing.
Mhm.
So I'm not a nice car, but I'm a good man,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that I am the best version of myself for you. So I'm going to clean the inside,
Mhm.
and that can be spiritually, physically, but I want to make sure that you are receiving the best version of me because I love you and I want what's best for you as well.
Mhm.
You get what I'm saying? So if you had a car that you loved, I wouldn't drive it recklessly. I wouldn't return it back to you, and the inside of it is all messed up. It has a scratch on it.
Mhm.
No, I'm going to make sure I take care of that thing because I know how much it matters to you. So I know how much I matter to you.
Mhm.
I'm going to take care of myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that just it goes to show the power and the importance of self-love. Because it's not just for you, it is for you first and foremost, but it's also for the person you love as well. You're loving yourself because they love you.
Yeah. Yeah. And our relationship is really easy. It's really effortless. I'll say that. So anyone that old myth of like, oh, love is hard.
It does not have to be a struggle.
It is not a struggle. It is not hard. Our relationship is harmonious, effortless. But it is that way because we both did so much work on ourselves individually and we continue to do the work on ourselves and together. So because we've established those patterns and that safe space, and that's just who we are, is just continuing to work on ourselves because we love each other so much. And I kind of think of some of that happens naturally when you meet the right person. Like, I just want to be a better woman. I want you to have the best of me. And so I continually strive to bring out the best of me in your presence because you inspire me that way. And so that's a natural thing that happens when you find your person. That's one way that they inspire you to be the best versions of themselves, of yourself. And it's not just, the thing that we kind of all naturally do as humans when you first meet someone and you're like, oh, I'm going to act like I'm perfect. They're only going to see the best pictures. They're only going to see the best side of me. We all kind of do that because we're always trying to impress. We're on our best behavior those first couple weeks or first couple months, and then we get to meet the real person. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about feeling naturally inspired within your own self to level up and transform and embody that best version of yourself. Like, oh yeah, I am now that person who's more responsible. I am that person who is aware of my own BS and calls myself out on it. I am that person now that has open communication, that person that maybe in the past, when something was hard, I would run away rather than face it. Now, if there's something uncomfortable, you need to sit with it and feel it. And then I come and tell you and you talk about it. So that is why our relationship is so incredibly easy, is because we do the work on ourselves. And because we've done so much work, when we come together, it's just absolutely effortless. And that's how it should be. You don't need to be fighting. It doesn't need to be a struggle. If it is, you're probably not with the right person, or you guys haven't done the work on yourselves to come together. And I think another thing that has really, really helped us is the thing about love languages. So, do you want to talk more about the
Yeah. So, like you said, um, meeting the right person definitely inspires you to want to be a better version of yourself. And so when we met shortly after, I was like, man, I gotta like make sure that I love this woman right. This is something special. This is something sacred. And so I bought a copy of the book, The Five Love Languages, which I had heard throughout my career as a counselor, but I had never read myself. I decided, well, let me find out how to speak the language of love, if you will. And if you're not familiar with the book is basically a guide on how to love someone according to the way that they naturally um, like to receive love. And there's different types of love languages. I think one is sharing gifts. Another one is um, words of affirmation. Physical touch is another one. Acts of service is another. And I believe there's one more in there, but you would have to, get the book yourself. The point is
quality time? Quality
quality
time.
time. There it is. Yeah. So quality time. And, understanding your significant other's love language really helps you to,
To know how to speak their language. So, as someone who speaks four languages, this really resonated with me because it's like if if we're together and you speak English and I speak Portuguese and we don't speak each other's language, we could be saying the nicest things, the best, most bonding things in the world to each other, but it doesn't mean anything, right? If the other person doesn't understand it. And so, and I've seen this modeled in many relationships. If you just observe people, someone will repeatedly try and show love. Like, let's give the example, someone has acts of service as their love language, and they're with someone who has words of affirmation. So, the person who has acts of service, they're just intuitively, the way they show love is they'll do things for you. So they'll do things for you. Maybe they'll have like dinner made. They'll clean. They'll fix things for you. I mean, whatever they do, they're doing things for you, and they're doing that as an act of love. Like, oh yeah, because I love it when people do things for me, so I'm gonna go and do this all for you, and that's communicating to you how much I love you. But now, if that other person is words of affirmation, they like the spoken word. So they like to speak the love and they like to hear it in return. So they want to hear the I love yous. They want to hear how much you mean to me. In order for them to feel loved, they need to hear it verbalized. And so if these two people are together, they might love each other very, very much. But if they're not aware of each other's love language, they're not going to feel fully loved and understood, because the person who needs to hear I love you might not be hearing I love you. And the person who needs things done for them to feel loved might not be getting anything done for them because they don't necessarily understand that that's what the other person needs.
exactly. I mean, you basically you nailed it on the head. But for instance, if a person, if their love language is acts of service, that means that they like to see action. They want to see you put into action,
Mhm.
demonstrating that you love them by
Yeah.
doing certain things
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
But if your love language or your way of speaking love is words of affirmation, then it might come off as superficial to them. They
Right.
might think like, oh, this person's just, trying to be nice with words or something,
Just saying that.
like, and it could be genuine compliments that you're giving this person. like really genuinely praising them for who they are, but because they don't speak that love language, they won't understand it. And so this is why it's so important for us to understand what our partner's love language is. And one thing about our relationship that's really special for us, we share the same love language. We both have words of affirmation as our first love language, and we also have physical touch. And so that just helps us so much. Like
Mhm.
we're always on the same page with the way that we express our love.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that isn't always the case. Sometimes you can have a significant others whose love language is different, and this is why it's important to learn those love languages so that you can then know how to effectively communicate with your partner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so that makes it really, and you can have more than one, right? So you notice
Oh,
like
definitely.
we mentioned that we kind of both have two. So often you'll have more than one. There might be like a primary one, but it is normal to have more than one too. So that's something that, for me, when I learned about the five love languages and we were, I remember we were talking about this together. And so when
Right.
he bought that book and brought it home and was like, he shared it with me that he was reading it. I was like, oh my goodness, this man is the real deal. Like, he bought a book to know how to love me, right? Like I'm just, yeah, I was so impressed. So we identified what ours were together, and we were just like so thrilled to find out that we have the same ones, physical touch and words of affirmation. And that just makes it so harmonious because like I know I come to you and I instantly like I need a hug. I need that touch. Like I need a kiss. I need that physical love. I need those caresses. And that's what reassures me. That's how I feel loved. So, I mean, yeah, and yes, words are important too. And I love how you verbalize and how communication, and I'm also a Gemini, so communication is so important to Geminis and we have to be able to talk. And I remember that's something in past relationships I had wished for. Maybe I was with someone who was kind of surface level and I had just wished for those deep, meaningful conversations. And so I think that really also ties into words of affirmation because then you're having those deep, meaningful conversations or even just really interesting conversations. And, you're able to express how you feel about the other person. And because I always remember thinking like, well, in past relationships, he'd be like, well, why do you love me? Why are you with me? And, he couldn't say. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a red flag if you can't even identify why you chose me out of any other person in the world. I wanted to be chosen for exactly who I am, not just because I filled some of the boxes or because I was available and right there. I wanted it to be me for who I am. And so you were able to so well verbalize and articulate exactly why it was me.
Yeah, and I can, and because you're selfless, you're genuine, you are generous, you are absolutely amazing, like the way your mind works. Like she mentioned, she's a polyglot. She speaks 4.5 languages.
Working
I
on
be
it.
pressing her.
Working on
I
it.
always press her on this, but she's pretty good with French. She's working
Getting
on
there,
it,
getting there.
and the way that she is, she's just a beautiful person inside and out. And usually when you come across someone who has this immense beauty that this woman has physically. They're very consciously aware of it. And anyone who's ever met this woman, be it in person or seen her on her podcast, can testify that she doesn't come off as the type of woman who is just obsessed with her looks. She doesn't put herself on a pedestal above anyone else, and I love that so much about you. Um, but I did think of the author's name. His name is Gary Chapman, for anyone
Oh,
who's
there we go.
interested.
Chapman.
His name is Gary Chapman, and the book is The Five Love Languages. We would highly encourage you to get a copy of that if you're seeking to improve your relationship with your significant other and understand their love language better.
Yeah.
So I think we've shared quite a bit here. Is there anything else that we
I
left
You
out?
know what? There's one thing I'm actually going to grab my phone because I remember that there was a post that I had because it really just it included me in as to where was I at right before we met? Like where was my headspace? What was I thinking in those weeks and months like right before we connected? And I don't mean met in person, but before we, connected at all, first started talking. And
Mhm.
so I went back and I looked at some of my old posts because I wanted to see, like, what was I thinking? What was I posting? What mattered to me in those moments? Because I knew, I mean, of course, I remembered that I had created that sacred space, to bring my soulmate into. But I just kind of looked back to see where I was at. So one of my posts, which I probably made just days or weeks before we started talking, I said, are you someone that you love? Are you someone that you adore and would be inspired to spend the rest of your life with? Love yourself fiercely. And that's very much the mindset that I was in is, just taking it back to that inner work and that shadow work. I was very much in that being the person that I would want to be with in a relationship. And because the work is never done, right? It's not like love isn't like a diploma where you go to school, you get your diploma, you have it and you're done. No, the work is never done. But it's not work in the struggle or in a drudgery kind of sense. It's more like evolution and transformation. Like now we're walking on this path together and we get to evolve and transform and grow together as we walk side by side. And that's incredibly exciting. And getting to witness the journey of, I mean, he was already an incredible man when we met, but getting to watch him grow and expand and deepen and transform into an even more dignified and amazing, wise man over the years since we've been together. And now we're going on 4 years, being
Yeah.
almost 4 years that we've been together. That has been such a beautiful thing to witness. So, because we're always looking to do the inner work and transform and grow past our own challenges, and because we're always doing that and we're doing that in tandem, we get this beautiful experience of growing together. So when you're doing that, your relationship never stagnates. Because I think that's what ends so many relationships is, you're like, oh, the other person doesn't understand me. I don't, no, no, no. And a lot of times it's because someone's not growing, right? Someone has stagnated and maybe the other person senses that, and it could be with the wrong person to begin with, but I really do think a lot of times it's stagnation. So don't, and this is going back to your analogy of like loving yourself and taking good care of yourself for the other. Never allow yourself to stagnate. Even when you found your person, remember your dreams. And they'll probably be interwoven together. There'll probably be a lot of overlap, like how we're on this podcast together, right? We're on a parallel journey. But never, this would be my advice to the listeners, never forget your own dreams and never stop working on yourself because while you might look to the exterior for all the things that you want out in the world, the way you're going to attract and magnetize it all is going to be in here, inside. And this goes for women and men. So when there's something in your life that's missing and that you want, you're going to create it in your internal world first. And when you do manifest your soulmate, make sure that you continue to grow and evolve so that you two can go on this beautiful journey together. And if you're always growing and evolving and transforming together, you're going to have a beautiful relationship and a beautiful life.
In conclusion, just to touch on some of the points that we made throughout this episode, um, you have to be willing to sacrifice um, some aspect, the things that are no longer serving you to make room or space for this person to come into your life. You also want to write down what it is that you want because writing it down brings it from the subconscious into the conscious, and it also is you putting forth an action towards manifesting this person. The shadow work she was just speaking on, cleaning the inside and out to make sure that you are well suited for this person. Don't invite somebody over to your house if the inside of it's filthy. Clean
Mm-hmm.
the house first.
Mm-hmm.
Communication, open communication, making sure that you are willing to talk about those things that you perceive in yourself, that you perceive in your significant other openly and coming from a place of love, remembering the person that you love is not the enemy. it's your that's your person,
Hmm.
so you want to always come with them with love. Men, be tender with the woman. Be tender. And also the love languages, speaking about those five love languages, really understanding how your partner likes to receive love and understanding how you like to receive love as well. So you could, again, communicate that with them.
Thank you for joining us. And until next time.
Have a wonderful day and peace.